My name is Benjamin Powell, and I serve as the Coordinator of Student Leadership and Fraternity and Sorority Life here at the University of North Georgia. Today I'll be taking you through Alcohol Skills Training Program as part of our NM101 education training. This program is designed to give you more information about alcohol and how to be safe while interacting with it in your college years. Please pay close attention, as at the end there will be a brief quiz. From this program, we hope that you walk away a more informed individual about how to interact with alcohol. The purpose of this program is to help those who drink do so in a less risky and more informed way. If you choose to drink and how you choose to drink is up to you. We know through research that telling students not to drink isn't effective. So instead, we try to do a harm reduction approach. In essence, if we can get you to drink more safely and drink potentially less, then we're doing our job with this program. A note about alcohol abstinence and the philosophy of ASTP. The best way to avoid the unwanted effects from alcohol is to not drink it. If you're hoping to avoid all hangovers and all potentially bad decisions or any other unfortunate side effects of alcohol, you simply shouldn't consume it to make sure. Consuming alcohol is illegal for persons under the age of 21. Regardless of how you feel about this law, it is still a law. However, should you choose to consume alcohol, we're going to talk about ways that you can do so more safely. As previously stated, this program is about harm reduction, so any steps forward are good steps. And for those of you who are watching this program who currently abstain from alcohol, know that this information could still be helpful for you or a friend should the need arise. In the second section of this program, we're going to be talking about what we expect to happen when we drink, and how those expectations can be subverted. When thinking about our expectations from alcohol, we need to be able to answer the question of why do we drink? So when we ask the question of what are the positive outcomes of drinking alcohol, there's a lot of different answers. People say it makes them more outgoing, it helps them relax, it makes them more social, it makes it easier to talk to other people, and a lot of other things that relate to being able to converse with people better and be more social in any particular setting. And then we ask, what are some of the less than positive outcomes of drinking alcohol? And typically in this question, people say things like, I get hangovers, I say things I don't mean, I sleep through and miss my class, there's a potential of getting a DUI, and things like that. And then we ask people, has alcohol ever hit you differently in different situations? And for most people, the answer is yes. For example, going to the bar on a Friday night with your friends feels very differently than having a glass of wine with your parents at Thanksgiving. And we really kind of need to figure out why that is. Why does alcohol hit us differently in those two situations? Because when we're drinking with our parents at Thanksgiving, we're not doing it so that we can be funny or that we can engage with them more easy and things like that. So why do those two situations feel distinctly different? And to display that, we're going to talk about a thing called the Bar Lab. The Bar Lab is an experiment that was conducted at the University of Washington. The Bar in Bar Lab stands for Behavioral Alcohol Research. This experiment was done to determine how people act in settings where alcohol is present and how it differed depending on the actual presence of alcohol and what the social dynamics looked like. The way this was actually put on was that students who were over 21 were asked to report to a room in an academic building that was set up to look just like a bar, complete with neon signs and bottles of liquor behind the bar itself. Students were then split up into 4 groups that we'll talk about in a moment, and were observed via a series of hidden cameras and microphones. All of this was to determine if alcohol really does grease the wheels, socially speaking, like everyone thinks it does. So let's get into the results of this. The first group observed were students that were told they were going to be given alcohol and received alcohol. And they acted exactly how you think they would. They were loud and social and vibrant. People were mingling and chatting and having a good time. It looked like a bar normally would, albeit in the middle of a classroom setting. And so students that expected to receive alcohol and got the alcohol acted exactly like you would if you went to a bar, ordered a beer, and then had a beer. No surprise there. The second group of students was told that they weren't going to receive any alcohol and then promptly did not receive any alcohol. This is the group that definitely did not get what they signed up for when they were told, hey, come drink in a classroom for science. But anyways, this group acted exactly how you think a sober person in a bar would. Most of them sat around, not talking, not mingling, just kind of twiddling their thumbs and drinking their waters and sodas, kind of just waiting for the whole thing to end. If you've ever been the sober friend at the bar, you probably know exactly what this looks like. This is the group where things get a little more interesting. This group was expecting to get alcohol, but didn't actually receive any. So how do you think they acted? They acted like the first group. They were still loud and social and hung out with each other and mingled and tried to meet each other and things of that nature. They didn't act like sober people. They acted like people who had been drinking. The way this was actually done was that the University of Washington had developed what is essentially really convincing non-alcoholic beverages. Think O'Doul's and non-alcoholic beer, and then for gin and tonics, they would put like one little drop of vodka in the straw, so the first thing that participants tasted was the vodka, and their brain kind of did the rest. But so these students, despite having none of the chemical and biological factors that go into alcohol, were still acting as though they had it, which I think we can extrapolate a lot from. Finally, the last group was told to expect no alcohol, but was actually given alcohol. And how do you think they acted? They acted like the second group. They were still the sober person at the bar. They were still just kind of sitting around drinking their drinks, not really mingling too much, not really going out of their way to be social, maybe just every so often asking that one person they half knew from psychology class how their day was going. So this group, despite having the chemical stimulation and biological stimulation from alcohol, didn't show any of the social symptoms of having it, which says a lot about the way our body and mind actually interacts with alcohol. So what does all this mean? Why do we talk about the bar lab? Well, as it relates to alcohol expectancy, there are three main things we can take away. The first is that the effects of alcohol are caused by three different factors: the substance itself, so the alcohol, the setting, and a person's mindset. We all know that alcohol has certain chemical triggers that makes our brain and body do a certain thing, but the other two factors, the setting and a person's mindset, also play a really big part. Using our earlier example, the setting of a bar and the mindset of a social are going to do drastically different things to the way you approach alcohol than is the setting of your home and the mindset of having dinner with your parents. The second thing to take away is that expectancies have a higher effect on the body than the actual chemicals in alcohol. This is to say that yes, when you drink, you feel a certain way, but a lot of that feeling comes from the fact that you are at a social with your friends on a Friday night celebrating or just having a good time. Your brain is doing a lot of that work for you, so as soon as you're getting ready to go to the bar, go to the social, your brain is already saying, all right, let's do this. I know what this means. This means we're having fun. Let's get in gear. And the final is that social and interpersonal benefits of alcohol are a result of expectancies. So everyone who thinks like, oh, I have to drink to be able to talk to people, I have to drink to be outgoing, I have to drink to do this and that and the other, the good news is that that's actually just who you are. You may think that the alcohol is what's pulling you out of that and allowing you to do those things and be those things, but in reality, you have those capabilities within yourself no matter what. So go forth more confidently with that information. The next section of this presentation is going to be the assessment of your use of alcohol. So how much are you drinking? What does that equate to in terms of biological effects and things of that nature? So when we're asking people how much do they drink, what we're really asking is how many standard drinks do they have. And a standard drink is anything that contains 0.5 ounces of ethyl alcohol. Now that probably really doesn't mean a lot to you, and that's okay. So what I'm going to do is tell you how many ounces of various types of alcohol are considered one standard drink. So starting off, 12 ounces of beer. This is really your very normal light beer. Think Miller, Coors, Bud Light, things like that. 10 ounces of any microbrew. So this is things like Blue Moon or anything you would get at some of the breweries from around town. 10 ounces of any wine cooler. So these are things like Smirnoff Ice. 8 ounces of malt liquor. So things like Mike's Hard and Colt 45 and Mad Dog fall into this category. 8 ounces of ice beer, so Natty Ice and Bud Light Platinum fall into this category. The difference between ice beer and regular beer is that when you brew regular beer, you typically sweat out all the moisture, it rises to the top of the still, and then falls back in and dilutes the alcohol. When you brew ice beer, whenever all of that moisture rises to the top, you freeze all that condensation so it doesn't fall back in and dilute the alcohol, thus giving it a higher alcohol content. Next we have 6 ounces of ice malt liquor, which is something called Mickey's Ice, which is not a thing I've ever heard of or even seen in my life. 4 ounces of wine. There's a lot of give and take here because there's so much variation in wine between are you drinking white, are you drinking red, and things like that. But typically 4 ounces is a good rule of thumb. 1.25 ounces of 80 proof hard alcohol. Now these are most things that you can find on the shelf, your typical vodkas and bourbons and whiskeys and tequilas and things like that. And then a very small group of 100 proof alcohols only requires 1 ounce to be a standard drink. In this group are things like Everclear and Captain Morgan's Dark Spiced Rum. Some of you might be wondering, what about moonshine or hooch or whatever you call your batch drink that you make at your parties? Moonshine, it depends on the proof of that batch because it is so kind of distilled on a micro level and it changes from batch to batch. And things like hooch really can't be pinned down because they're made differently by different organizations. But hopefully that gives you a better idea of how much of each type of alcohol constitutes a standard drink. For anyone who's interested how to actually calculate what is a standard drink of any particular type of alcohol, this is the equation. You'll put 0.5 ounces in the numerator, and you'll put how much alcohol by volume is in the denominator, and then divide. So if a drink is 5% alcohol, you'll do 0.5 divided by 0.05 to get 10 ounces of whatever that drink is one standard drink. An easy way to measure how many standard drinks you're having is using a traditional red Solo cup. Now these do have to be Solo branded cups. The generic ones will lie to you, unfortunately. But on a normal Solo cup, there are these lines on the cup. At the bottom is the 1 ounce of liquor line. A little further up is 4.5 ounces of wine. Like I said, there's kind of some give and take there because of the difference between red and white and things like that. And further up is 12 ounces of beer. Pouring up to these lines will let you know that, okay, you're having 1 standard drink of each of these types of alcohol. Now, if you want to pour your liquor up to the wine line or your wine up to the beer line, that's your choice. But make sure you're not counting that as 1 drink because that's where you get in trouble. According to a study done by the University of Washington, who have done several studies about alcohol, the average college student reported that they drank 10 standard drinks per week. And really, that's not concerning. If that's being spaced out correctly, then that's a very manageable interaction with alcohol. Where we get into trouble is when we have students drinking 10 standard drinks or more a night and doing that several times throughout the week. However, looking at this 10 standard drinks a week that's being reported as the average consumption, we can kind of determine several things. So what does this all mean? Well, there's 4 points we can really draw from all this information. Number 1 is that not everyone drinks. Objectively, we probably know that, and we probably even have friends that choose to abstain from alcohol. But a lot of times we talk about college as if everyone is drinking. And that's just not true. Those who do drink don't necessarily drink heavily. Not everyone is going out and getting really drunk, having several drinks a night, every night, kind of how we tend to think about it sometimes. Those who drink heavily have their calm nights. So people who are going out and consistently getting drunk and having many drinks aren't necessarily doing that 7 nights a week, 365 days a year. They'll have their calm nights where they either drink less or maybe don't drink at all. And all that is to say that heavy drinking isn't necessarily the norm that we think it is. We tend to think of college as this nonstop party sometimes where we're constantly engaging with alcohol, but some people aren't engaging with it at all, and some people are engaging with it on a very limited basis. There's a lot of people interacting with alcohol in a lot of different ways, and we just need to be cognizant of that so that we don't fall into the trap of thinking that heavy alcohol consumption is just a part of college that we have to conform to. In the 4th section of this program, we're going to be talking about how alcohol actually interacts with your body on a more scientific level. The first thing we really need to understand is what alcohol actually is on a chemical level. Alcohol is considered a depressant, which means it slows down your central nervous system and cognitive functions, including your motor functions, which is why it is illegal to drive after you've absorbed a certain amount of alcohol into your blood. The next thing we need to talk about is how your body actually absorbs alcohol. So approximately 20% of the alcohol that you drink or ingest in any way is absorbed through your stomach lining. After that, when it goes into the small intestine, it's absorbed very quickly. That's why alcohol doesn't hit you right away, is because most of it is not actually entering your bloodstream until it hits your small intestine. So now that we know how alcohol is actually absorbed into our system, let's talk about what affects how quickly that happens. So there's four main components. So the concentration of the alcohol, literally how strong is what you're drinking. A shot of whiskey is going to be absorbed more quickly than a shot of beer, for example. Is there food in your stomach? So the reason people will tell you to eat before you drink is not because it stops absorption, because it like soaks it up. It's because it physically makes it harder for the alcohol to get into your small intestine, where it's absorbed really quickly. How fast are you drinking? So if you're going shot after shot after shot, it's obviously going to affect you a little harder than if your body was just kind of meandering through a few glasses of wine. And then effervescence. So what this means essentially is how bubbly is what you're drinking. To put it in simplest possible terms, when you drink something like champagne that has a lot of bubbles, those bubbles interact with the part of your body that separates your stomach and small intestine, and it kind of keeps that doorway open for longer, meaning more alcohol can get into your small intestine. Therefore, you absorb it more quickly, and you get drunk faster. There's four ways in which alcohol leaves the body. One is through urine. Naturally, as you ingest things, they work their way through your system and you excrete it. Through your breath. So when you drink alcohol, part of it will sit in your throat and sit in your mouth just kind of naturally, and as you breathe out, you'll expel alcohol particles. Tears. When you actually take alcohol into your body, if you start crying and things of that nature, the alcohol will actually take that route to leave your body. And sweat. So if you have been drinking and you start sweating profusely, maybe you're hitting the dance floor a little too hard or something like that, alcohol will actually start to seep through your pores, which is why a really warm dance floor has that very particular musky smell. Despite the rumors that there's multiple ways to sober up, including taking a shower, drinking some coffee, eating some food, which none of them are really bad practices, there's really only one way that alcohol completely leaves your system, and that is with time. You have to give yourself time to sober up. There's not really a way to fast track that process. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you how to actually calculate how long it will take. The rate at which your body can actually process alcohol is 0.016% per hour. So the way you can actually figure out how long it'll take you to get sober is simply take your blood alcohol content and divide it by this number. For example, as you can see on screen, if you are at a 0.08, which is the legal limit, it will take you 5 hours to become completely sober again. Again, there's not really a way to fast track this. You just have to give it time so your body can actually work through what you've put into it. Speaking of blood alcohol content, we're going to move into the next component of this program. Many of you have probably heard blood alcohol content before, or BAC before. For the purposes of this program, we're going to be calling it blood alcohol level, as it is the more scientific term for this. As you can see, blood alcohol level, or BAL, is defined as the ratio of alcohol to blood in the bloodstream as determined by calculating the milligrams of alcohol in a person's body by 1,000 milliliters of blood. There are 5 things that generally affect our BAL, and what you'll notice is that some of these overlap with things that affect our rate of absorption. So the first one is quantity, so how much are you drinking? Drinking 3 beers isn't going to have as much of an effect on your BAL as drinking 6 beers. Rate, how fast are you drinking it? In essence, the faster you drink, the higher your BAL goes. Weight, the more you weigh, the more blood you have, and so it takes more alcohol to affect your BAL. Time, the longer you drink, the less it takes to maintain a BAL. Essentially, your body gets to a point where it has a harder time keeping up with how much you're putting in, and so it sits at a BAL and doesn't process the alcohol out as fast. And then biological sex. So testosterone and estrogen react with alcohol differently, meaning that biologically speaking, females cannot handle alcohol in the same way that men can. Let's talk about how alcohol affects you at different BALs. At a .02, you're very relaxed. Your mood is starting to kind of level out. This is really kind of the beginning of why you drink. It's a lot of the good effects of alcohol. At a .04, that feeling of relaxation goes even further. You feel very calm. Your mood is really leveling out. A lot of your stress is starting to decrease. At a .06, this is where we hit the point of diminishing returns, because this is where your cognitive judgment starts to get impaired. You might start getting a little louder, you might start not being able to walk straight, some of your speech may be a little slurred, but overall, you still have most of your motor functions intact, you can still drive, and you're still feeling pretty good. At a .08 is when you really start seeing a lot of the negative effects. Nausea will start to kick in here. There's potential to get sick. Your motor coordination is impaired at this point, which is why .08 is the legal limit. So from here on out, we're really not going to be seeing much of the upswing of alcohol. Our mood is just going to kind of get lower and lower, and we're not going to be able to see as many positives that we did at a lower BAL. At higher BALs, we get even deeper into the negative effects of alcohol. At a .1, our cognitive judgment and motor coordination is even more significantly impaired than it was, meaning that driving is out of the question. We're probably having a hard time communicating thoughts, and not slurring our speech and walking in straight lines is basically a lost cause. A .15 to a .25 is often a blackout. For those of you who don't know, a blackout is when your brain continues to function your short-term memory so that you can have conversations and function, but none of those memories are being sent to your long-term memory, so you don't remember any of it. At a .25 to a .35, we have a loss of consciousness and a risk of death. 1% of the population at .25 is looking at a potential death, and about 10% of the population is looking at a potential death at .35. And it's at this point that we really are outside of the range of they'll sleep it off. If we just leave them alone, they'll be okay. Just put them on a couch with a trash can to give them some water. At this point, we need to be really, really looking at, let's get them to a doctor, let's get them to a hospital, let's get them help. And then a .4 to a .45 is considered a lethal dose of alcohol for a vast majority of the population. At this point, if someone is unresponsive, lost consciousness, has started vomiting on themselves, or anything like that, we need to be taking the proper steps to get them help. It is no longer a question of, will we get in trouble for taking them to the doctor? Will they get mad? Will their parents find out? Or anything like that? Because at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that we would rather someone be mad at us or get in trouble than we would have them die on us because we didn't get them the help they needed in that moment. So one thing we have to talk about is tolerance. Tolerance is when it takes a larger amount of alcohol to produce the same feeling in a person as it would with someone with a lower tolerance. For example, it will take more alcohol for you if you have a high tolerance to feel like you're at a .08 than it will for someone who has a low tolerance to feel that way. Really important to note about tolerance is that it is not the same as BAL, which means just because you don't feel like you're at a .08, if you biologically are at a .08 based on your alcohol consumption, you are still legally impaired, and therefore are still subject to the law. So it's important to really know what your BAL is and not so much just how you're feeling. And tolerance is highly dependent upon environment. Like we've already talked about, a lot of our interactions with alcohol and a lot of the ways we feel with alcohol are a result of expectancies. If you're familiar at all with the term classical conditioning, you know that your body will react to certain settings. Therefore, going to a bar or to a social, your body is already going to be kicked into high gear to have fun and kind of let those effects of alcohol flow. Whereas if you're at home, relaxing, having a glass of wine while you watch a TV show or something, your body isn't exactly going as wild. Let's take a look at the difference between BACs of men and women for a second. So looking at the chart, if you look at a 180-pound man that had 3 standard drinks in an hour, their BAC will be around a .06, meaning they're still safe to drive and they're kind of still at that sweet spot of consuming alcohol where they're getting all the positive effects. Now if you look at a 120-pound woman drinking the same amount, their BAC is around a .11. That means she's severely impaired in terms of motor coordination and judgment. She's absolutely unsafe to drive. Those are two vastly different places, and we have to be aware of that if we want to be safe and look out for each other. All of this is to say that we have to be aware how ourselves and others are interacting with alcohol to remain safe. We have to know how much they're drinking, what kind of state of mind they're in. We just have to be responsible. We also need to be aware, again, that different situations prompt a different response. For example, spring break is a very different situation than having a beer with your meal, with your friends. If we can be aware of these things and we can keep track of how much people are drinking, keep track of how we're feeling, and always remain safe, then we can avoid so many of our issues and we can avoid so many tragedies. In Section 6 of this program, we're going to be talking about the biphasic effect of alcohol. This is essentially a term that means that as we drink alcohol, the way our body reacts to it moves in a wave that I'll show you in a moment. As stated before, alcohol is a depressant, which means it brings our central nervous system down. To respond to this, our body releases stimulants to raise us back up. These stimulants that are being released are what give us the good feelings associated with drinking alcohol. That's what make us feel relaxed and easygoing and things like that. And as you can see in the chart, every time alcohol brings us down, our bodies compensate with more stimulants to bring us back up. Therefore, we think the more we drink, the happier we get because our body will just continue to bring us back up. However, our body can only keep up for so long. On the chart, you'll see a point where the upswings start to get lower. This is because while we can continue to consume alcohol, our body can't continue to produce stimulants fast enough to counteract the effects of the depressant. This occurs at a BAC of a 0.06, which is why it's referred to as the point of diminishing returns. From this point forward, you will really only get the negative effects of alcohol. This is also why continuing to drink just to get your buzz back doesn't work. Once your body has hit a point where it can no longer counteract the alcohol, where it's run out of stimulants, it has to be given time to recharge. So losing your buzz and then trying to drink even more to get it back is only going to push you deeper into those downswings. The biphasic effect of alcohol can be heavily altered by introducing other substances. And there's two general types of drug interactions that we have to talk about. The first is potentiation. So when two substances that produce the same psychological effects are put together, it creates a much more amplified effect. For example, weed and Vicodin are also both depressants, which means when they're mixed with alcohol, the effects of the depressants is greatly increased. Something that's really important to know is that these effects aren't as much added together as they're multiplied. Therefore, you might think you know what it will look like to get high and also drunk, but in reality, that's going to go much deeper than you originally anticipated. The second type of drug interaction you need to be aware of is the antagonistic effect. This is when two substances that produce different neurological effects are mixed. For example, cocaine and ecstasy are both uppers while alcohol is a downer. Therefore, when you mix them, your body's not sure what kind of stimulants to release, and so it's unsure how to proceed. This kind of strain on the body can have a lot of different kind of deleterious health effects. In the last section of this presentation, we're going to be talking about how to take all of this information and actually use it to reduce risk. One thing that's really important to think about in terms of safety is how substances interact with your mental health. It's really important that you know your limit. If you're constantly trying to push past your limit, it's possible that you're going to put yourself in a really dangerous situation with a lot of very far-reaching consequences. And it's really important to know how alcohol and other substances are going to interact with any medications you might be on. For example, some antidepressants and certain birth controls can actually increase the effect of alcohol. You have to be very careful when dealing with this stuff because you don't want to get into a situation where you accidentally drink too much and then you end up somewhere you never intended. Briefly, I'm going to go over some basic strategies for practicing safe consumption of alcohol. Set limits. Measure how much you're drinking and don't go past that. Only bring a set amount of money with you to a bar. Eat prior to or while drinking. Again, this doesn't stop alcohol from being absorbed, but it does slow it down, which is important. Keep track of how much you've had to drink. Count standard drinks. If you're filling one full solo cup up with liquor, that's not one drink. That is multiple drinks. Be aware of that. Space your drinks. It's okay not to go shot for shot or beer for beer every single time. Finish something, take some time, and then go get another one. Avoid trying to outdrink others, especially if you are a woman trying to outdrink a man. We've already discussed that biologically speaking, that will not end well. Don't make it a competition. Just enjoy it. Just drink slower. You don't constantly have to pound alcohol. It's not going anywhere. You can take your time. Use a designated driver always. Never go out into a situation where you think you're going to get drunk and not have a way to get home. Don't accept drinks if you don't know what's in them. If a stranger comes up to you or someone you don't really know and just says, "Here, I made this for you," or "I got this for you," don't accept it. Only take drinks from people you trust or that you have seen be made. And listen to friends if they're telling you you've had enough. 9 times out of 10, your friends are just looking out for you. They're not trying to ruin your fun. They're not trying to bring you down. They're just trying to make sure that you're safe. Finally, remember, all of this program is about harm reduction. So a few things to think about. If you abstain from alcohol, stick with that. That's the only way to completely negate any negative effects of alcohol. If you drink below a 0.05 to 0.06, perfect. That's where you're going to max out the good effects of alcohol, so just stick with that. And if you drink above a 0.06, consider about maybe pulling that back a little bit, drinking less often. At the end of the day, if I can move the needle towards you being safer, then I will have done my job. And that is the conclusion of Alcohol Skills Training Program. I hope that even if you didn't particularly like it, you did learn something. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot those to me at the email listed on screen. And have a wonderful day.